handout, demanding that I pay the money that I work for. At least that's what you say. But what gives you that power? Who died and made you boss? I'm barely getting by today. I can't afford that loss. So if you don't show some legal obligation that I pay, put your hand back in your pocket.
Well, hello there. I'm Hartwell Broussard, and I welcome you to Help, the program with help and a request for help. The reason help is needed is because America is in distress. If you notice in the background, the American flag is displayed upside down. When a flag is displayed upside down, it is done so as a distress signal. If you wish to confirm that, go to the United States Code, Title 36, Chapter 10, Paragraph 176A. My goal is to help you to understand why America is in distress, and hopefully you will do something to help get us out of this dire situation that we are in. For this program, I will be helping you by showing you part 2 of the video entitled Police State 3 Total Enslavement, released by Alex Jones. I hope you're paying attention to these police state videos because it deals with an oppressive government. It has been said that in the 20th century, 200 million people were murdered by their own governments. Governments do not make people safe. Governments make people dead. And I hope that you find out that before you wind up, well, you fill in the dots, the line, the blank, whatever. You figure it out if you can. Hopefully you can by now, because I've been showing you these police videos, these police state videos for a long time. It is time to read the signs of the time. Here is part 2 of the video entitled Police State 3 Total Enslavement.
And inside this New World Order, there's no room for freedom. But still, the man on the street may deny that there even is a world government. And that's really, well, the devil's biggest trick, isn't it? As they say, convincing the world that he doesn't exist. Well, the New World Order's certainly done the same thing. It's like a deer who's stunned in the headlights, who just hesitates a moment and is smashed into a bloody pulp. Another headline in Salon magazine read, Europe's New World Order, and began to try to create this illusion that, oh, there's a choice between what type of New World Order you want to live in. You see, the globalist social architects and engineers, the propaganda masters, know that they can no longer keep the existence of this world government from you. So they're saying, okay, there is a world government, but there's a left-wing world government and a right-wing world government, and you have a choice, world. What type of world government do you want? Who's going to control the New World Order? And they completely bypass any discussion of, hey, we don't want a New World Order. We want to keep our rights, keep our freedoms, keep our heritage, keep our nationalism. So think about that. 5 years ago, there isn't a New World Order. You're a kook to talk about it. You shouldn't get involved in it. You shouldn't discuss it. It doesn't exist. You're crazy if you think it exists. And now, oh yeah, there's a New World Order, world government. But, okay, folks, what type of world government do you want? Now, that's just on the surface. There is no left-wing or right-wing world government. It was founded and chartered by the military-industrial complex in San Francisco in 1945. It is nothing but a debaters club to basically steer and control the third world. The UN plays the good cop in military affairs, while the former Soviet Union and the United States play bad cop as the global government is expanded. Now you see the EU, the Pan American Union, and the Asian Union that were formed decades ago, merging their currency systems and their laws. And still, the average American, the average European, the average Asian has no idea that this system has already taken control of their lives. A lengthy 31-page report in the national newspaper of Australia, the Sydney Morning Herald, read, "Manifesto for World Dictatorship." And in the article, they called for a liberal world government controlled by the United Nations and announced that the bad cop is America running the fascistic world domination racket. But if you inspect the IMF, the World Bank, that finances and controls the UN, the central banks of nations around the world, you look at the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, it's all funded, chaired, and run by a tiny cabal of high-level bureaucrats that serve the international banking elite that also owns the military-industrial complex. So again, they've spun the debate to what type of New World Order will you have? The UN and the World Council of Churches has been calling and writing the textbooks for a one world religion, billing that as the only hope for world peace. Meanwhile, the global government finances and runs and provocateurs almost every known terror organization on the face of the planet. There are countless other headlines drilling it into our heads that there's some type of transatlantic battle over the shape of the New World Order. Again, sucking you into phony debates to make you think you have input on this process if you'll just accept the New World Order. But what will it be like living under the New World Order? A United Press International headline read, "Israel to kill in U.S. and allied nations." The FBI didn't have any comment about it. Ariel Sharon says that, yes, he'll kill citizens of America or any other country wherever he wants, including the United States. And our government, the federal government, has signed agreements with the EU to extradite American citizens for things that aren't even crimes here. Thought crimes, namely criticizing the EU, or any of their policies is now considered xenophobic. Imagine foreign Mossad and Interpol agents murdering Americans. No judge, no jury, no arrest, you're just dead, and it's in the back of the newspaper. That, my friends, is what it'll be like living inside the New World Order, and it's happening right now. We see CEOs, we see leaders from Mexico, the US, Canada, Chile, calling for getting rid of our borders, merging our social security systems and our police and military. Deals have already been signed in late 2002 for, quote, Mexican and Canadian troops to deal with American terrorists and for peacekeeping. My friends, peacekeeping is the disarmament and enslavement of the people. The New World Order also allows European Union-controlled and financed corporations to buy up critical government services like waste, water, and electricity. Privatization isn't private at all. It is simply a partnership between select corporations that act more like organized crime rings or modern pirates allied with government, bringing you this tyranny. An important area of New World Order documents, because the globalists communicate with each other on a routine basis, and their writings are public, though they're not distributed widely or talked about in the mainstream controlled press that is there to distract our attention away from issues of real substance. The Project for a New American Century, founded in 1997, was run by Dick Cheney, Jeb Bush, Wolfowitz, and of course Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. And the Project for a New American Century called for a New World Order in its writings that can be viewed at their website. They said that there needed to be a, quote, Pearl Harbor event to speed up the New World Order and to get the American people behind a national draft and behind a war of aggression against 62 countries, a war that Bush has said will last generations. In fact, in one statement, he said 100 plus years. They went on to say that Saddam Hussein, this is in a 2000 dossier they wrote up, a 2000 battle plan, that Saddam Hussein wasn't a threat, but that he provided a convenient pretext to get the oil in Iraq. But understand, the invasion of Iraq was also not just about the 3 to 5 trillion in oil or the 1.7 to 1.9 trillion occupation cost of Iraq over the next 5 years. It was also about setting the precedent for the New World Order to invade sovereign nations. And if you think there's some rift between Bush and the UN, Bush and Blair have already announced that the UN will control the oil, the trillions of dollars of oil that the Iraqi people truly own. So again, playing good cop, bad cop, and we have them on the record saying, think about this, that they were going to go after Iraq, they needed a Pearl Harbor event to get the American people behind it. And the military-industrial complex, the CIA, certainly provided that on 9/11, September 11, 2001. But the New World Order also goes back into history. They orchestrated World War I, and they've bragged about it. And they tried to get their League of Nations, the first UN. When that failed, they needed a bigger war, and they certainly generated that with their asset, Adolf Hitler, who they funded and trained. In fact, I have the news articles out of large established West Coast newspapers from the early 1940s where the president's grandfather, George Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, actually was arrested and fined for trading with the enemy, running over 50% of Nazi steel production through Brown Brother Harriman. In fact, a headline on MSNBC reported that FDR's Auschwitz secret. Well, I'd talked to many B-17 pilots years ago who said they weren't allowed to bomb entire factories owned by General Motors, General Electric, and Ford, building Panzers for Hitler's war. Why did the globalists do this? Because the bankers were funding both sides and they stood to gain and profit from a protracted war. The bankers funded Stalin, Hitler, and the United States in England during World War II. FDR's Auschwitz secret. And in fact, the London Guardian reported from now declassified secret documents that Hitler saw the Duke of Windsor, the man who would be king, as no enemy, U.S. files reveal. Well, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh lived in Germany during most of World War II and then escaped near the end to fascist Franco Spain. The British have engineered these disasters time and time again by controlling both sides of conflicts. They take over in the aftermath. And who's one of the main banking families behind major wars going back to the battle at Waterloo? The Rothschild family, the family that bankrolled Europe. And every time we investigate a major scandal or a company being sucked dry before being imploded and pension funds being stolen, we run right into the Rothschild family, namely their British subsidiary, N.M. Rothschild. You also have the Crump family in Germany that owns many of the publishing companies in the world. They weren't prosecuted after World War II, certainly not. But their little creation Adolf Hitler and his minions were. And now we have the modern New World Order system. In March of 2002, I interviewed BBC reporter Greg Palast. He said the head of N.M. Rothschild, Lord Wakeham, who's on the head of Britain's censorship board, was trying to restrict him from breaking the story of 1,000 plus pages of secret World Bank and IMF documents. Mr. Palast interviewed the former head economist for the World Bank, Joseph Stiglitz. The former chief economist of the World Bank, Mr. Stiglitz, reported that the World Bank and IMF planned to implode the world economy. You see, the globalists print the money. They gain their power out of creating bubbles, then bursting those bubbles, creating depressions and recessions, and getting control of assets, corporations, and private property. The globalists control the boom and bust system. IMF unveils details of a plan for international bankruptcy system. What a scam. They go into third world countries, their documents show, pay off the leadership to not pay their debts, and then to sign over the natural resources and the population themselves, as well as their public lands, as collateral on a debt that the IMF and World Bank printed up off their printing presses at absolutely no cost to them. Think about the erosion of America's sovereignty. We have Mexico going to the Hague court to intervene on behalf of Mexicans on death row in the U.S. And guess what the World Court did? They told the U.S. Supreme Court to freeze Mexican executions. And guess what? The Supreme Court did exactly that. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, oh, we definitely agree that you are the authority. Already, our courts under the control of the United Nations. And we have the International Criminal Court coming to life, and it doesn't even respect the basic rights contained in the Magna Carta, much less the Bill of Rights or Constitution. Meanwhile, we have the Pan American Union forming, merging social security systems, merging law enforcement and military, as we said earlier. The EU is doing the same thing at the same time. EU poised for huge expansion to the east, 10 former Eastern Bloc nations merging with the EU, and they're quite at home in the socialist system. Another pretext the world government uses to get involved in sovereign nations is the drug war. And the evidence is clear. MI6, the CIA, Mossad, and other major intelligence agencies control the drug trade globally. In fact, after the globalists took over Afghanistan, opium production surged to record levels. That was another one of the little motives behind 9/11. Not just oil, not just weapon sales, not just the pretext to invade sovereign nations and empower this world government, but also that key belt of opium production. In fact, before 9/11, only about 10% of opium was being produced there with the poppies. Now it's over 60%. You know, I've been very frustrated in the 8 documentary films that I've produced because I could spend an entire program just covering one aspect of the New World Order. But to understand the total enslavement system they're designing for you and your family, that we're already deep into, but it's getting worse in the degrees, you need to have an understanding of the entire system and how it fits together in this web of tyranny and slavery. A key area that we need to look at is government-sponsored terrorism. How do the globalists get us to accept giving up our liberties and freedoms? Well, it's simple. They scare the daylights out of us with terrorist events they create. They pose as our saviors. We go to them asking for help, and they give us solutions that get the chains more tightly fitted to our ankles and mainly to our minds. Let's look at just a few examples of this, and they are voluminous. I would just hope that everyone out there visit Infowars.com on a daily basis to see even more examples of this. A long time ago in my study, I discovered that white supremacist, Hispanic supremacist organizations, almost all racial organizations in the world are actually founded, not just funded and controlled, by the globalist, by the MI6/CIA Mossad control arm. Whether it's Hamas, which Yitzhak Rabin, a former, he was assassinated, Israeli prime minister, admitted. In fact, UPI and Reuters and Haaretz, a major Jewish newspaper, have now admitted this. Why would Israel found Hamas, the group that engages in terror bombings? Because then the military state, military dictatorship that oppresses Jews as well as Palestinians, gets to maintain its control over the Middle East. It's its pretext for attacking its neighbors, expanding its boundaries, having police state controls, censorship over the Israeli media. This is how they maintain control. I mean, why does the mob, burn down your grocery store? So you'll buy protection from them. I mean, it's really simple. But with neo-Nazis especially, there's been cases here in Texas. They caught them in Fort Worth. The FBI created a Klan group back in the late 90s, tried to get them to blow up a chemical plant. The sheriff found out and stopped it. There have been countless examples that we've covered. But it just came out that the modern neo-Nazi groups in Germany were founded in 1963 by MI6, British intelligence. And it just broke in German courts that the entire leadership of the National Democratic Party, NPD, who's been caught firebombing people, murdering folks in Germany, the entire leadership, the top 30 people, and it's a small organization, a little over 200 members, the entire leadership, those that print the newspaper, that give the orders, that have the rallies, are German intelligence. So it's not German intelligence inside the MPD, it's German intelligence running it, and it was of course founded by their bosses, MI6. And it admits in these Scotsman and BBC and London Telegraph headlines that the government ran the organizations as agent provocateurs paid by intelligence services. And why did it come out in court that the government was doing this? To create fear so Germany could pass laws restricting everyone's mobility, everyone's freedom, banning other mainstream political organizations that are nationalist in Germany, that are standing up for that government sovereignty against EU expansion. So it's simple. You want everybody to give their rights up? You create Nazis who go out and kill some people. The government goes, oh look, they're dangerous. Let us take your rights to keep you safe. And they've been caught doing it. Same thing just came out in England. Turns out that MI5, MI6, and Army intelligence officers have gone public that the British government pays Al-Qaeda hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 90s to carry out assassinations all over the world, little proxy groups. Intelligence agencies love to use organized crime and terrorist groups they created to carry out their terror. And officers went public on this. They quit. Some of them were jailed over it. The government didn't deny the facts of what they said, but they would arrest them. And it turns out that almost all the bombings in London and in Ireland over the last 24 years, since 1980, were conducted by different arms of British intelligence. They didn't even provocateur it. They weren't just the heads of it, which they were. They didn't have somebody else go do it. They actually bombed buses and churches and buildings. And why? As an excuse to have a crackdown police state in London and all over England, and to keep a military occupation force in Northern Ireland. It's incredible. And this was just calmly announced in dozens of major British newspapers in late 2002, early 2003. And then as soon as the stories appeared, they disappeared. The government never refuted it. They admitted it was true. In fact, the government said, well, we wanted to look legitimate to the terrorist groups, so we did this. But they founded and controlled the groups. And again, use that fear to control the country. It's been in our news as well that in Georgia, law officers involved with supremacists actually running the groups. That was in the Athens Banner Herald. But let's look at some even more serious geopolitical versions of crisis creation. We've all heard about North Korea threatening to nuke their neighbors, threatening to nuke South Korea, threatening to nuke the United States. But did you know that it was the U.S. government, Republican and Democrat administrations, they're all together on these key issues, armed North Korea with the reactors that could produce upwards of 100 nuclear warheads a year. They also helped transfer computers and missile systems to China illegally.
What you've just seen is part 2 of the video entitled Police State 3 Total Enslavement, released by Alex Jones. Please watch for part 3 in a future program, and I highly encourage you to visit Alex Jones's website, Infowars.com. Learn more about this police state now, while you still can. Police State 3, Total Enslavement. Total enslavement. Total enslavement. Did you get that? Total enslavement. If you wind up being a total slave, you won't be able to do anything about this police state that's being formed. Now's the time. Here's a quote from Pastor Tex Morris. We love the world too much, and we don't love God enough. End quote. And that is so true. People love things of the world, like ball games and the casinos and going to parties. People, it's time to get away from that. It's time to help in this police state that's being formed here in America. Or some of these days, you're going to wind up being a total slave. Think about that until next time. And until next time, may all your sunsets set right, and may the good Lord bless you both, day and night.
And you're fighting on the wrong side, but you haven't got a prayer. Show me the Lord. Show me the Lord. Yeah, your income tax extortion plot